G'day guys and gal. When you think of the word crusade, what springs to mind? A war of faith, the purging of heretics, or maybe a genocide of religious minorities. You definitely wouldn't think of oversized, roided up super soldiers killing aliens in space at the directive of a golden atheist wizard. I mean, I guess if you're a Warhammer fan, that's probably the only thing you think about when someone mentions a crusade, but that's besides the point. Recently, we've been covering the chronological lore of the Imperium of Man, having a look at the Dark Age of technology, the Age of Strife, the Unification Wars. Next up on the come train is naturally the Great Crusade, mankind's attempt to reclaim its shattered empire and usher in a new golden age of mankind. A period of time rich in lore, with a vast variety of unique and interesting Xenos, as well as a good look at the Primarchs when they were actually interesting, and not just a bunch of ass-kissing smelly moths or angsty tryhards. I say that statement with love, but the good versus the bad dynamic that 40k has recently found itself in is way less interesting than the 50 Shades of Grey that the Crusade offered. Before we get started, fuck John Barilaro, free Christo. Today we're going over the Great Crusade, who was involved with it, what it achieved, and then I'll highlight the interesting parts. I want to note that the Great Crusade was vast, and there is a shitload of lore involved with it. It tends to happen, we got 18 legions to keep up with, so I won't be able to cover all of it, but you'll get a pretty good idea of what's going on. Let's get into it. The Great Crusade kicks off towards the later part of the 30th millennium, just as the Unification Wars came to a close. There was a bit of an overlap, as some cheeky dogs kicking up some rebellions on Terra as the Great Crusade was beginning could be considered part of the Unification Wars still. Regardless, mankind's ascension back into the stars had begun, and it had a bit of a rocky start. See, the Emperor had wanked his holy cum into a test tube, and from that he had created 20 demigod babies called Primarchs. From these Primarchs, the Space Marine legions were born. The idea was that these super overpowered beings would lead their respective legion into the galaxy and absolutely curb stomp some bitches. Unfortunately, the Primarch's mother had a bit of postnatal depression and allowed Chaos Gods to yeet the baby Primarchs across the galaxy. Now it's kind of implied that the Emperor let this happen, as a way of allowing each Primarch to develop their own personality and traits. However, the evidence suggests that losing the Primarchs was a gigantic pain in the ass for the Emperor, who would have been better off if they didn't get flung away. Either way, the Emperor had now lost his generals before the Crusade had even begun. Good thing he still had like 1,000,000 super soldier space marines, as well as Mars sucking his dick and making him ships. Hence, the Crusade began with no Primarchs. Initially, that wasn't really an issue, unless you were the Emperor's children or Thousand Sons, of course. Most of the human worlds had suffered greatly during the Age of Strife, and didn't have the technology, manpower, or will to successfully fight off the Emperor's armies. Hence, they either put up a weak fight, or they straight up agreed to join the Imperium. About 90% of human worlds join the Imperium without an issue. You obviously just don't hear about it because it's less exciting. Whilst thousands of fleets travelled in all directions, conquering or settling every world they could, the Emperor had a different agenda. His goal was to find all of his lost children and bring them into the fold. Now, I've already done a video on the lore surrounding the meeting of the Emperor and each Primarch, but to summarise, the Emperor did find all of his lost sons, beginning with Horus. Some of the meetings were joyful and sweet, like when the Emperor met Sanguinius or Perturabo. Some meetings were a huge dick measuring contest, like when the Emperor met Vulcan or Lehman. And some meetings were straight up hostile, like when the Emperor met Angron and Angron tried to kill him. One of the funnier meetings, depending on your sense of humour, was when Conrad saw the Emperor and tried to claw his own eyes out. Never change, Conrad. Either way, eventually each Primarch was reunited with the Emperor and they were given command over their own Space Marine Legion. As each Space Marine was created from the DNA of a Primarch, the Space Marines saw their Primarchs as their daddies. As the Crusade pushed further out into the darkness of space and more Primarchs were added to the roster, its momentum accelerated dramatically as its resources became nearly limitless. However, this began to create a new problem. The Crusade was beginning to push into various Zeno Empires. Now, whilst most of the shattered human empire was full of pussies and pushovers, the Zeno Empires were ancient and very powerful. They had technology that often far surpassed the Imperiums, and they also had some wacky-ass abilities. There were two Zeno Empires that made humanity be like, oh shit, oh fuck, oh no. The first was the Hudur, who were these creepy blob creatures that could accelerate your aging. The more Hudur there was, the quicker you age. This caused guardsmen to age 100 years in seconds, whilst even some Astartes succumbed to the effect. One Space Marine was aged to about 3,000 years old, and he survived, but yeah, he was not in good shape. Perturabo fought and killed a lot of these bitches, and after all that, he noted that he felt older. Considering a Primarch literally cannot age beyond their prime or die of old age, this is a huge props to the Hadur. However, the Hadur were just the cum stain on a hooker's corpse compared to the Rangdang though. Now once again, I've already covered the Rangdang in a different video. Fuck me, I've made a lot of videos. But this Zeno Empire was so powerful that it straight up nearly ended humanity. The Dark Angels, who were the #1 legion at the time, were given a bunch of fun genocide tier toys by the Emperor, but they were still nearly exterminated by the Rangdang, and there are strong theories to suggest that the Rangdang played a major role in at least one of the lost Primarch's demise. The Imperium finally beat the Rangdang when the Emperor had to play Pokemon with his big ass shard of the Void Dragon. That's right, the Emperor had to throw a literal god at the problem to fix it. My lord. Outside of these two Zeno Empires, the rest weren't so bad. The Eldar were around and often provided a good fight, but they were few and far between, whilst the Orcs just got their ass kicked time and time again. The Tau, Tyranids and Necrons also weren't a thing yet. There were some pretty cool Xeno and human empires that the Imperium ran into and had to murder. These include a human world who thought it was the original Earth and had their own version of the Emperor, psychic Xeno race that had members that were millions of years old, gigantic evil space spiders, and a civilization of humans and Xenos living in harmony that fought the forces of chaos. There is a lot of really cool shit that happened in the Great Crusade, and there were numerous times where the legions and their Primarchs faced destruction. As the Crusade ground on, and the Primarchs grew more confident, or in most cases more retarded, various issues and cracks started to appear. Angron and his World Eaters were no longer bringing worlds into Imperial compliance, and they were instead just killing everyone. Lorgar and his Word Bearers were bringing worlds into Imperial compliance extremely slowly, due to Lorgar trying to make the Emperor a religious icon, and Conrad lost his mind and nearly killed Rogel Dawn. Every attempt by the Emperor and his non-retarded sons ended up just making things worse. Lehman was sent to go bring Angron to heal, but that just ended in a battle between the Space Wolves and the World Eaters. The Emperor then went with Gilliman to get Lorgar to stop molesting choir boys. They did this via blowing up Lorgar's favourite city. However, all that did was give Lorgar the push he needed to join Chaos and sow the seeds of the Horus Heresy. Conrad was thrown in jail, and then he escaped and blew up his home planet. So yeah, there was a fair bit of shit that was starting to go sideways for the Imperium. But overall, things were still pretty good. Until they weren't. See, the Orcs had grown sick and tired of getting shit on by everyone, hence they formed a fuck-off massive wah on the planet of Ullanor. The Emperor was like, dearie me, hence he, his Custodes, and a shitload of Primarchs and Space Marines attacked Ullanor and wiped out the Orcs. So yeah, the Orcs got shut on by everyone. Again. At the end of the war, the Emperor was like, alright, bitches, I'm out of here. Horus is in charge. Hence the Emperor returned to Terra without telling anyone why, and Horus was chosen to be the War Master and to continue the Great Crusade in the Emperor's name. The victory on Ullanor also kinda signaled the beginning of the end of the Great Crusade, as all wars in the Great Crusade after that were more of a cleanup than anything. So why did the Emperor abandon his sons and go back to Terra? Didn't he know that they all had major daddy issues? Well, it was actually for a pretty good reason. See, mankind was progressively getting more and more psychic, which, if not handled correctly, would result in the Age of Strife Part 2, Electric Boogaloo. The Emperor needed a way of cutting off mankind's reliance on the warp, hence starve the Chaos Gods of fuel. To do this, he had to figure out how to breach the Eldar Webway, which was like a tunnel that exists in the warp but is protected from it. He would then turn a portion of the Webway into a human-compatible area, hence allowing mankind to travel around the galaxy via the Webway instead of the warp. On top of this, mankind could set up great cities in the Webway that would be completely untouchable by the warp. To finish this project though, the Emperor needed to be there in person just because of how awesome he is. The reason he kept this a secret from his sons is twofold. Firstly, the more Primarchs that knew meant there was a bigger chance that Chaos would catch on to the plan. And secondly, the navigator houses of the Imperium, as well as all the industries that rely on the warp travel to make money, would flip their shit and likely try to kill the Emperor, or at least sabotage his project, which would suck. Well, once again this plan backfired, and Chaos found out anyways. You know, for an old wise as fuck fortune teller, the Emperor has made some pretty brain dead mistakes. With Horus as War Master, everything was okay for a bit, then rapidly went to shit. Perturabo destroyed his home planet in a fit of rage, numerous Primarchs were MIA, and Fulgrim started smashing drugs. The Emperor had also banned the use of Psykers to try and keep his sons in check until the Webway project was done, but all this really did was piss off Magnus and cause more problems down the track. Eventually, through the manipulations of the now Chaos-aligned Lorgar and Erebus, Horus gets stabbed by a poisonous knife and nearly dies, only living due to him turning to Chaos. This officially marked the end of the Great Crusade and the beginning of the Horus Heresy, although the Primarchs were still crusading for the most part, whilst Horus quietly turned half the Primarchs to his cause. The first part of the Horus Heresy was so successful for Horus due to all the loyalist Primarchs being divided and crusading elsewhere. Horus could also command the loyalist legions where to go, as they did not yet know he was a total dick. He sent the Blood Angels to a demon-infested world, and he sent the White Scars away. It's actually pretty funny that the traitors didn't win the Horus Heresy, considering the disgustingly huge advantage they had at the start. Now, I've already covered the Horus Heresy in both normal format and ASMR format. I'm not sure why I did it in ASMR, but if that's your vibe, then go for it. As such, I'm not really sure where to go from here. Maybe the Age of Apostasy, or maybe the Scouring. We'll figure it out. If you enjoyed the video and you want to support the channel, then Patreon is the place to be, where only $1 per month give you access to a boatload of Warhammer hentai. Hit the subscribe button, then hit the real subscribe button for more great content. Join the Discord for more memes, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.